Hello, welcome to Living Confidently with MS. I'm Sonia Hankin, and I'm going to be doing a 4-week series on how to live confidently when you have MS. What's MS? Multiple sclerosis, for those who don't know. I have a guest today with me, Renee Schulzen. It's very funny how we met. I was diagnosed with MS about 7 years ago. And I was going to this cafe that a friend of mine owned, and one day you had walked in and you were limping, and the woman who worked there asked you why you were limping, and you told her, I have MS. And then she goes, oh. Hello, welcome to Living Confidently with MS. I'm Sonia Hankin, and I'm going to be doing a 4-week series of half-hour shows to teach you and share with you different stories and different ways on how to live confidently with multiple sclerosis. I'm Sonia Hankin. I am a mental health therapist. I'm also a transformational coach and a certified journey dance facilitator. So I use all of my education, knowledge, wisdom, tools for my own self, and I want to share some of that with you. And today I brought a good friend of mine, Renee Schulzen, who also has MS, and it's actually really funny how we met. Because I had just been diagnosed, it was about 7 years ago, and I was going to this cafe where I'd have coffee, whatever, work on my computer, and the woman who worked there met you because you were there a different day and you were limping, and she says, why are you limping? And you told her. And then she goes, oh, you have to meet my friend Sonia. So she hooked us up and we met up for coffee. And the funny thing is, we went to high school together. We graduated 1 year apart from each other. And my prom date was a boyfriend. You dated my prom date for a while.
I did?
Yes, remember? We talked about that. So it was very funny. So we had all these connections, and it was kind of cool. What wasn't cool is that we both have MS, but what's interesting is I actually started thinking, oh my God, I wonder who else from that high school has MS. Was there something in the water at the time, or who knows? But that aside, so I would love for you to share first we'll both share like when we were diagnosed, how we found out, and then we'll get into how we've dealt with it.
Okay.
So when were you first diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in 1996, at the very beginning.
And how old were you?
I was 26 or 27. I think I was 27. And I remember it was in the month of February. And it was very shocking. Gosh, that's like 22 years ago almost. It's been a long journey.
And what brought you but what was it that you had to go to doctors, or what was wrong? What were the symptoms?
I woke up that morning and I answered the phone. Someone had called me and my speech was slurred and I couldn't speak clearly. And she recognized that there was something wrong. And immediately she said, I need to get you to a neurologist. And I remember she set it all up for me, and I had an appointment within hours. And when I got up to get ready, I was having a problem with my right leg as well. So, and I drove out to this neurologist, and it was actually his day off. And he just happened to be there for some reason. And it went on from there.
But so you got diagnosed pretty quickly.
He diagnosed me that day. He said, I'm going to speak the words, but you still need to go have testing.
Right, right.
So but it was pretty obvious to him that that's what was happening.
Right. Because see, for me, I had 2 years of symptoms, different symptoms.
Oh, really?
Nothing made sense. And I went to a cardiologist, I went to ENT, I went to a urologist, I went to a gynecologist, I was getting acupuncture, I went to a nutritionist. Because there were so many different things that were off, and no one ever put it together until like 2 years later. It was a specialist. She was a gynecologist and urologist combined, and she sent me to have all the tests I should have had the year before, 2 years before, and then she sent me to a neurologist, and she said to rule out MS.
Really?
She suspected it.
In looking back on my life, I had incidences when I was a teenager that it was MS, but I did not know.
No, did not know,
at
right.
the time.
Well, it's like me. I 2 years of symptoms before the diagnosis. So my diagnosis was in 2010. So really, I started having symptoms 2 years before, but maybe even earlier. But I wasn't like aware of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. In retrospect, is when.
Yeah. So I would love to hear, because I know for me when I was first diagnosed, it took the wind out of my sail, and it was just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
So what was it for you just after being diagnosed? What was the first
The first reaction is what probably anyone would go through, that shocking, overwhelming, you cry, you freak out, you think your life is over. But what I had on my side was I was in my 20s, and when you're young, you feel really kind of invincible. And I kind of looked at this doctor with a challenge in my eyes, like, okay, we'll see. And, you know, if I had been diagnosed now, later in life, and I have a family and everything, I don't know if I would have had that confidence.
Mm.
But I was driven, and I was young, and it wasn't going to stop me.
Right.
After that initial maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I went to work on how are we going to fix this, or how are we going to live with this.
So you, from the beginning, it looks like you always kind of had that attitude of, I'm not going to let this stop me.
I think it was because I was young. I think it was that I had the youth on my side. Because again, if it were now, I'm not so sure.
Because see, I got diagnosed at, how old am I? I'm 50, so 7 years ago, so at 43.
Oh, 40s.
Yes, and I already had my kids. My kids were, I think they were 2 and 4 at the time. So it was a huge, like, shock, because it was like, oh my God, like, I have young kids, you know, what is this going to mean? What kind of mother am I going to be?
Yeah.
You know, am I going to be the mother I always thought I was going to be? Yeah. You know, just everything becomes in question, and you don't know. I don't know if I'm going to have limitations. I don't know if I'll be able to walk in 5 years. Who knows? You know, you go through all of that, and it's scary because you don't know. And I had the same attitude you had, as far as, you know, I had been doing all this transformational work. You know, I had done the shadow work. I'd been trained by Debbie Ford for like over 10 years. I'd been doing work on myself. So for me, I had the tools of, okay, you know, like, I'm strapping on my, you know, my parachute here, because I'm not going without a fight, kind of thing. And
that's a personality thing,
yeah,
right? That's just who you are.
Right. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to heal myself. That was my thing. I'm going to heal myself. I am. Because I'm special. You know, like, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I mean, within a week or two, I think, of my diagnosis, there was a guy, and I can't remember his name. He's a healer. He does these sessions in Canada. He's from Toronto, and his mom has MS. And I'm like, oh my God, he healed her. I'm going to go and be healed. So I flew to Toronto, like, within like 2 weeks. My husband's like, you're crazy. Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm going. But so what happened is, in the beginning, I had that attitude, you know, of, I'm going to heal myself. I'm going to do everything I can do. And I'm going to look for the gifts, because that's why I was trained to always look for the gifts. But that's not what happened. Maybe the first few weeks, but then I went to depression, and then grieving, you know, because with getting any diagnosis or any big change in your life, you have to grieve.
Yes.
You know, you have to grieve who you thought you were, you know. If there's things you have to give up or limitations, you have to grieve that I'm not going to be able to do hot yoga anymore. You know, I used to go to hot yoga and then I couldn't see myself in the mirror and I'd fall over. And, you know, and I've always been physically active. So for me, I had to really grieve. I won't be able to do some of the things I used to do. I can still be active, but not to the degree that I used to.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be a cardio queen maniac.
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore because, as you know,
Yeah.
as soon as our bodies get hot,
Yeah.
what happens to you when your body gets
When
hot?
my body gets hot, it's like everything shuts down. I cannot move. I cannot move forward easily. The fatigue, it's debilitating. I have to immediately go somewhere and lay down because I can't. My body just stops. But it resolves itself once I rest just a little while and cool down and everything, and then things are fine.
Do you know what I always wish I had when I get that hot? I always say, I need one of these walk-in refrigerators like they have in restaurants,
Yeah.
so I could just like walk in and cool off.
Because
you
once
know?
you cool
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
everything starts going again.
Yeah.
Whatever that's all about, I'm not sure.
So just to give our audience a little bit about what is MS, I'm not a doctor, but just from my own knowledge of reading about it and having the illness, MS is an autoimmune disease is where your immune system attacks your own body. It attacks the cells that are in the, and I'm probably not even explaining it right, but the myelin sheet that surrounds the nerves gets attacked. And when that's damaged, then your brain and your spinal cord cannot communicate in the proper way. It's kind of like, I always explain to like kids, you know, like with a computer, you know, if your mouse is kind of like jumping around when you're typing,
Yes.
or it's got a short circuit or something is off, it's kind of like that. So there's not the straight communication that
Yes.
you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
So it creates all kinds of symptoms. You can have fatigue is a huge one. Depression, loss of balance, tremors, stiffness, eyesight, bladder issues, bowel issues, sexual issues, what else? Oh, neuropathy, tingling, numbness. I mean, there's
Pain. Some people
pain.
experience
Yes,
pain.
there's so many symptoms, and that's why it's a difficult illness sometimes to diagnose because so many of the symptoms fit into other illnesses.
Yes.
So it's really a rule out game. You know, that's what I was told. Medicine is really a rule out game. So you got diagnosed and you're young and you're going back to work.
Yes.
Did it affect you? When did it start affecting you, I guess, mentally or emotionally?
That didn't happen until about 5 years ago. I was 44. I had an attack that left me without my right side, my right leg. And it's been a slow road recovering. There's been times where I couldn't walk at all. I had to use a wheelchair, I had to use a walker. It was a really bad attack, and being that I'm this age, being that it's my legs, because when I had, you know, the numbness, let's say I once had numbness all on in my trunk. That's something I can go ignore and go on about my day.
Right.
When it's your legs,
Right.
your transportation, it's really hard to ignore. I've learned to do it better and better, but it's hard, and it works on your self-esteem because I'm going into the grocery store with my walker, and a woman who's almost, I don't know, 20 years older than me is flying past me. It does something to your mind. And how am I going to take care of my family? And I don't want to cook dinner tonight. I am exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, it's all these things where when I was young, it was just me. And it didn't matter.
Right. You just had you to take care of.
Now I have so many other things that I have to do and get to. And my kids go to the gym with my husband. And sometimes when I drop them off, you know, I look at the women in their cute little gym clothes and their muscles, and they're going to work out.
Look at you! You look so fit.
And I see that, and it does something to your confidence.
Yes.
And it's not always like that, but there are days.
Right.
You know, so I try to stay out of those situations, because as long as you focus on that, it makes it all that much harder.
So let me ask you, since I'm a confidence expert, and you just said the word confidence, because of the training that I've done with the Debbie Ford and the shadow work,
Yeah.
I always ask myself certain questions. I just was trained that way. So for me, like when I was diagnosed with MS and I started to feel, negative about myself and feeling, down and thinking there's something really wrong with me and I'm not who I thought I was going to be, etc. The question I asked myself was, what am I making MS mean about me? Like, what does it mean about me that I have MS? So for me, the words that came up, the first word was defective. And as soon as I say it, I can even feel it in my body. It was like I felt defective.
Yeah.
And so that was my shadow. And I knew I had to really work on owning that shadow for me. But for you, what would you say you made it mean about you? Like when you saw that it affected your confidence, your self-esteem?
Yeah, it's funny because when you just said that word, I can resonate with that wholeheartedly. I never thought about it before, but yes, defective, or not as good as the person that does not have that, or the girl. I really don't compare myself to men. I kind of tend to look at other females and be like, well, why can't I wear those shoes?
Yeah,
I
can't wear cute, fun, high heel shoes.
And for me, I can't wear flat shoes either. I have to be somewhere in the middle, but someone will wear cute flip-flops and I'll just say, why? And I have to tunnel vision and not look at those things.
Not compare.
To get myself through, because that makes it all the worse, and it keeps you locked in that not good enough.
Yes.
So when I'm very successful at ignoring all that, I kind of function.
So one of the ways to stay confident, then for you, you've been able to catch yourself when you're comparing. And
after much practice and retrospect, just understanding it, it took a long time.
So, but it's about being aware, being mindful, and being conscious.
Yeah.
Because you and I were having a conversation in the car driving here that one of the things I found that helps me is when I'm in tune with my body and I'm really conscious and present, then I know what my body's telling me. So like as soon as I have symptoms in my legs or my feet, then I know something's going on and I need to stop, breathe, and figure out why I'm stressing myself out.
Yes.
Because Renee and I were talking that we both, like I asked her, what are some of the things that bring on your symptoms? And for her, the first thing she said was, my daughter. And I said, well, it's funny. Me, used to be my son. When my son was younger, he would have these, he was very difficult. And he would get under my skin, so to speak. And my husband would say to me, because this would be happening like in the car, and the first thing he would say to me is, how are your legs doing? And I go, they're burning.
Yeah.
And that's what would happen. So, and now it's more like you and I said, we're very similar, where if we're in a hurry, if we're running late, just driving in traffic does it for me. And then I took it further as we were talking, because I was thinking about this morning, because I was dropping my kids off. I had to go back home, get ready for the show, and I didn't want to be late, et cetera, et cetera. And plus I'm flying out to New York City tonight, so I have to make sure all my packing and everything is done. So, but I thought about it, and I thought, what is it underneath being late or not having everything done right? Is it being a perfectionist? Is it that you're afraid you're going to be judged by somebody? Is it that you're going to fall into, making a mistake so that now you can say, see, I'm not good enough, kind of thing? And we both shared a little bit that it's similar for us, right? You would say there's that perfectionism.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like a daily I don't want to say struggle, but it's something you have to deal with daily and pay attention to daily because it can get out ahead of you and take over. So you kind of have to have a more calm, aware. It's constant.
So
You have to
where?
monitor.
So let me ask you, because I've worked on not being a perfectionist for a long time before MS, and I'm still working on it. I mean, I still like my house to look a certain way, and my car, before Renee got in my car was a disaster. It was a mess. I'm like, I can't let her come in my car. There's trash everywhere, and so I cleaned it up. And we talked about it because I know had she come in my car, she wouldn't have cared.
No.
But it was me. I'm judging me for being disorganized or messy. Yeah. So it's really always about that. When we think someone's going to judge us, it's really not that they are. We're judging ourselves.
Yes.
And that's where you have to stop and reprogram yourself with that.
You have to reprogram,
Right.
because on days where I'm not walking smoothly, let's say, I always feel like people are watching. And that's self-imposed because nobody's really even
Right.
paying attention. But it makes it even worse when I think somebody's watching. So you have to reprogram yourself to not think of those things. And it's kind of tunnel vision, but it's a way to
Well, it's not
survive
tunnel vision.
this.
It's refocusing.
Yeah,
You know, putting your
Yeah.
focus on something else.
for sure.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I teach my clients, you know, how to reduce their anxiety or to change their thought patterns. And the way you do that is you have to refocus because, as you know, our thoughts create our reality.
Yes.
So if you don't like how you feel or what you're doing, then you have to change the thoughts.
Yes.
So you have to refocus, you know, and that's why mindfulness, meditation, all of that is
It's huge.
so important.
What you focus on.
Yeah.
I, in fact, remember going to my first and last MS support meeting way back in the beginning, years and years ago. And I walked in there, and some people were in wheelchairs and walkers, and I was very healthy at that time. But I listened to their stories, and although I can relate to their stories, because I felt the same way, but they would talk about, well, I have to lay down and rest for 3 hours, and then I can do something for 2 hours,
Oh,
and then I have to
gosh.
go back to bed.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I cannot be around this because that is not me. That's not how I function. And if I keep coming and listening to these stories, their perceptions of what works for them, I might fall into that. So I had to divert myself and focus elsewhere.
Right, you had to remove yourself from that because you didn't want to
Yeah.
you didn't want that energy or that to affect you.
Or those thoughts in my mind, and because then you...
That could even be a possibility for you.
Right.
Because what we believe, right,
Mhm.
you can only create and change if you believe in it.
For sure.
So if you don't believe in something, then, you know, it's like so funny. My husband doesn't believe in chiropractors, so sorry for chiropractors out there. But the other day he hurt his back or something, and he says, someone recommended a chiropractor. And he looks at me and he goes, do you think I should go to a chiropractor? And I said, well, do you believe that they could help you? And he goes, I don't know. But I said, if you don't believe it, then don't go because it's going to be a waste of time.
Yeah.
So you do have to believe in what it is that you want to create. You know, you have to believe in it.
Yes.
If you don't, it's just not going to happen because your subconscious and the old story comes in and takes over. So
I feel like that's the reason one medicine may work for this person and not for this person. That's one reason. The food system, the eating works for one and not for another. It's because who you are, what you believe.
I want to talk about that because this is huge. So when you're first diagnosed, right, then it's like, okay, thank you, I have an answer. Thank you for the answer because for me it was 2 years of not knowing. But now it's like, okay, I have this information. What do I do with it? So now I have to figure out what's my treatment plan. How am I going to, what is it that I'm going to do differently?
Yeah.
And of course, we have the internet, which is amazing because you can find anything and everything, but it's also a curse.
Yes.
Because,
and when I was diagnosed, we didn't have this.
Right.
We didn't have the phones at our fingertips, so I didn't get to see all that.
Right.
Because there's bad stuff
Oh,
too.
there's a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing because you can read so many things about this way to eat and that way to
Yeah.
eat, this medication versus people who don't take medication. And if you have a hard time making decisions in general in life, then this is like really takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah, that's one part of the equation I did not have. Now
That's
you're
great.
saying that I had Barnes and Noble. I did. I went to Barnes and Noble immediately
Right.
and somehow stumbled across nutrition on MS. It was a fluke, but that was all I had.
Right.
I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a phone, and I think that's almost a blessing.
Yeah.
Right? A little bit.
But so your doctor, like my doctor, my neurologist, the first neurologist I had, suggested that I go on the really heavy drugs, the interferons. And I said, absolutely not. The reason I said that is he was telling me the side effects. And he says, oh, you'll feel like you have the flu 2-3 days every week. And I go, I have a 2 and a 4-year-old. I cannot have the flu every week. And he says, oh, well, then do it on the weekends. I go, even worse. My kids are home on the weekends. Like, really? Yeah. So I changed doctors just because I felt like he really couldn't relate to. And then he's telling me, oh, yeah, take vitamin D. But I'm like, I'm the one who told him about that. So it was just like, I need a new doctor. So I got a new neurologist. He gave me the different options. Actually, we have the same doctor. Well,
now
used to. Right,
yeah.
And I chose to go on Copaxone, which is the oldest drug that's been out for MS. And the reason I chose to go on it was because there was no side effects to the organs or how you feel. I mean, the only side effects are lipoatrophy. So where you inject, your body, like I have like dents in my so I stopped injecting all over my body because I didn't want dents everywhere. So now I just have dents in my lower back, so nobody sees it but my husband. So
I have those too.
So it doesn't matter. But I know when I met you, we had talked about that because you were also on Copaxone for a long time, and then you took yourself off.
Yeah.
So I'm still on it. Yeah, and I've had one relapse since in 7 years, so it's pretty good.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, but what made you go off of it? And before I even ask you that, the decision, when I made that decision, because you were talking about everyone's different and you have to figure out what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
So for me, the other drugs were not going to work for me. And the Copaxone sounded like that could work for me. So I did, and I'm still on it. For you, I remember when we met that I think you were off of it at the time. But what made you, like, tell me your history around the meds.
The first medicine I went on was Copaxone. No, I had taken Avonex. The needle, oh my God, because it was intramuscular, it was long.
Ooh.
That was the first one you spoke about. But then I switched to Copaxone, and I had great success with it in the first 10 years or so, give or take. And then I felt like it wasn't really working anymore. I wasn't feeling as great as I had been feeling. Now in retrospect, I know, because I've been learning for over 20 years. In retrospect, I would have adjusted some lifestyle things rather than say the medicine's not working.
Right. And what lifestyle things would you change?
I had 2 little ones at the time, and they were still in elementary school. I would have adjusted. I would have rested more. I wouldn't have tried to do everything every day, all the time, and to be perfect with the kids.
Do you think, like, because you have MS, I have MS, that we're even drawn to do even more than we normally would just to prove something? Like, to prove that, I can look at me, even with MS, I can do this.
I can still do this.
Yes.
I can do it just as well as you can do it, if not better.
Right.
And I think it's more, I think that's more subconscious, more than deliberately thinking that. Looking back, I think, because I wanted to be like all the other moms. I wanted to do the things they're doing, and so
So today went by really fast. We've barely covered anything, so we're going to come back next week and really dive into what we just started to talk about. because I think it's really important as to what we do with the illness and what are better ways to take care of ourselves. So I hope you join us next week, and I look forward to hearing from you.